Jody Vance with you. It is time to assemble our political panel. For a second there, it looked like it would just be Stephen Smart and I co-hosting the program here on CKNW Afternoons, but we have managed to secure Mario Canseco as well. So allow me to give the official welcome to both Stephen Smart and Mario Canseco, who you've heard here on CKNW Afternoons many, many times as part of our political panel. Stephen is the Western Canada General Manager for Hill and Knowlton Strategies, former Legislative Bureau Chief for the CBC, and former Press Secretary to the Premier of BC. Stephen, is always good to talk with you.
Jody, nice to talk to you as well.
And Mario Canseco, he of the phone that was not ringing until a moment ago, is the president of Research Co., giving our tech producer a little bit of a heart attack. Good to have you here, though, Mario.
Great to be here. Sorry about that.
It's not your fault. We had the same issue with Kirk LaPointe the other day. There's something up with the phones these days. There's some kind of little glitch, something in the air, as it were. Okay, let's get right to it here. We've got lots to cover. We've even got a couple of topics that are sitting on the bench. It was so hard to choose which things to chew on today. But let's start with coyotes, no pun intended there. Coyotes in Stanley Park, 30 attacks since December. Here we are in July, and a toddler, a 2-year-old little girl, pounced upon and bitten near the aquarium on Monday while with her family, of course. I open up the floor here. What have you watched unfold here, and what are your thoughts on this? Mario, we'll begin with you.
Well, it took a long time for them to essentially do something about this. You know, this attack that we are just talking about is not a random situation. And we've been talking about this issue for the past 6 months. It's no longer a matter that is related to specific times when coyotes are going to be around Stanley Park looking for food, looking for people. It's happening year-round, and it definitely speaks to the fact that we are very slow in getting things done when it comes to the Vancouver Park sport. You know, this is a situation that should have been solved and dealt with months ago, and it took a situation like the one we just went to essentially get them to do something about it.
Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, to me, and I don't say this lightly, I obviously don't want to see any animals, certainly don't want to see any animals destroyed and you know that sort of thing. So you know, lay that groundwork down. But you know, I mean, clearly it is just a matter of time if this was allowed to continue. And I hate to say this, it is a matter of time before a small child is killed. Like that, I think there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I think it has been a ridiculous delay and lack of taking substantive action by the park board that it's been allowed to get to this point. Like that poor, 2-year-old child and all of these people that have been attacked. I mean, that 2-year-old is probably going to have nightmares for years to come. And these aren't native species to the park, as I understand it. It's only been sort of since 1980 or so that they've been around. And I noticed a tweet yesterday. I don't know if you saw it, Jody or Mario, from Kasalem, the spokesperson for the Squamish Nation, who said that they actually had to invent a word for coyotes in the Squamish language because they're invasive species to the territory. So I think the action here was a no-brainer, and I don't understand why it's been allowed to last as long as it has.
So inaction with the park board seems to be a theme here, or is it just me, Mario? How do we demand better action? There's literally a mayoral candidate running on a platform of getting rid of the park board. Not that the mayor can get rid of the park board, but what are we? I mean, this was an establishment that was, iconic for many years in saving and preserving and literally cultivating green spaces in our city. And now there's so much in disrepair. We're literally getting to a position where children are in danger in our major parks in Vancouver.
Well, I think the main issue has to do with why it was created in the first place. And we go back to a Vancouver that was very different from the one we live in now. And I think part of the problem is that the Parks Board hasn't really grown as much as the city and with the city when it comes to certain decisions that need to be taken. It's definitely problematic, partially because you're not going to get the highest quality people doing this job for $18,000 a year. And I think that is also part of the problem. We need to have something that is a little more enticing for people to go and run for office and to do something that is meaningful. But ultimately, we have to think whether we want to be the only city in Canada that has a separated parks board making decisions for the parks and not leaving them in the hands of the council. What makes us so special? It might have made sense a couple of decades ago, but certainly over the past couple of years, a lot of people are scratching their heads.
How do we unravel that mess? How do we unravel that, Stephen, from a political standpoint?
I'm sorry, I didn't need to step on you there. I mean, I think the reality is that the park board has been, the Vancouver Park Board has been managing decline for a couple of decades, right? I mean, you go around to various parks and, you go to Marpole or Simon Fraser, it's Mount Pleasant Park right by me here. The basketball courts you see all used to be swimming pools, and budget cuts, they had to, fill them in and cement them and turn them into other things. I think we're all very proud of Vancouver parks and we love the idea of them. And I certainly would not advocate for anything that's going to be detrimental to the parks. But do we need that separate board? I don't understand why we can't have a rational conversation and look at the dollars and cents and say, okay, how much does it cost us to operate this park board? If we took that money and put it sort of back into, City Hall proper with proper staffing, et cetera, could we not do more with that money? I would have to think the answer is yes, and I think it's worth a debate.
Jody Vance with you. Very pleased to have our political panel gathered. And Stephen Smart, Western Canada General Manager for Hill and Knowlton Strategies, former Legislative Bureau Chief for CBC and former Press Secretary for the Premier of BC, and the President of the Research Co. polling company, Mario Canseco, as well. We have to unpack what I mentioned prior to the break. For those just tuning in, we're going to talk now about the shakeup at BC Ambulance Services. We've been talking for, it feels far too long, about delays between calling for help and help arriving. Health Minister Adrian Dix held a press conference yesterday, landed well by most accounts with those who are working their damnedest to struggle through this time. Your thoughts, Stephen, on what you heard from Health Minister Dix yesterday?
Yeah, I think credit where credit's due. We were kind of talking around my team today. We do a fair bit in the health and wellness space when it comes to public affairs and government relations and communications. And with the exception of the response to COVID, none of us could think of an example of the ministry moving in such a big way on a major issue this quickly. Without getting into all the details, this looks like a really, really robust response. And a friend of mine is actually an ambulance dispatcher, and they obviously have to be careful of, the kind of information they give out. But put it this way, from what I was being told, over the past few months, it was a scary, scary situation. And so this, credit where credit's due, this looks like a good step in the right direction here.
And Mario, your thoughts?
I like the fact that they're bringing technology into this. The fact that they're actually partnering with people who know about technology is certainly going to help. But we need to focus on the other thing. And I know you have Garth Mullins at 5, Jody. Yes. A lot of these calls are related to the overdose crisis. So if we deal with one of those things first, we are going to ensure that the ambulances can be there whenever they are required. So, again, it's very similar to the situation we were discussing before. The times call for something that is remarkably different from what we have right now. And in the case of the ambulances, it is going to happen sooner rather than later.
And that is the key, is getting the help to the people of British Columbia when and where they need it. And it feels as though the urgency is there. What really struck me during the press briefing yesterday with Health Minister Adrian Dix is how he put dates and deadlines. Very rare. And Stephen, you can probably speak to this. Very rare is it in a press briefing, a political press briefing. Do you get definitive dates of this is the benchmark?
That's a recipe for them, even reasonable delays being thrown back in your face. That's why it doesn't usually happen. But I think everyone is united on this one. Across the political spectrum. Clearly, these were needed. You can ask questions later about why this kind of action wasn't taken before, both with this government and the previous government as well. Clearly, this is not a new problem. This has been going for some time, but they brought in good people. I agree on the data side of it. It's interesting, like so much with our healthcare system, when it's an emergency, when it's a life or death emergency, generally the system works. It's everything, just short of that, where, these horrible stories of people waiting, hours if the ambulance would even come for painful situations. So I certainly was impressed.
Yeah, okay. Let's move to the one that's been sitting on the bench here that we wanted to try and fit into our political panel today, and that is the news surrounding cruise ships. A massive tourism feeder here in British Columbia, a starved segment throughout COVID-19, and even now with this reopening, continuing to be starved with all of the political moves surrounding U.S. ships, the requirement to stop in a Canadian port or two, and now the new news that, yes, there will be a return of U.S. ships to Canadian water, but not till November. Thoughts? Let's start with you, Stephen.
Yeah, I think no one disputed. I don't think very many people disputed the merits of shutting down the industry. I do think the governments, both provincially and federally, dropped the ball on this. You can't, the broken vase can't be put back together in terms of the changes that are going to impact ports like Victoria, where U.S. ships are not going to have to stop there anymore.
So they dropped the ball. Excuse me. Just want to clarify for our listeners. They dropped the ball with regard to the fact of allowing those ships to bypass a Canadian port.
That not taking action sooner. And I'm not sitting there saying that these, COVID-riddled ships should be allowed in our port, but I think they clearly let it lag for too long. Right. And the rules in the U.S. have been changed now, and I don't know that you could put that genie back in the bottle. So we'll see where it goes. But yeah, good that they're heading in the right direction.
Mario, your thoughts on this?
The timing is directly related to the vaccination efforts across the country. The fact that they have already promised that everybody will have a couple of shots if they want them by the end of September certainly makes it easier for the Liberals to say, well, we couldn't really allow this to happen at the federal level because we weren't all vaccinated. I think they were waiting for something like this because we're not going to see a lot of ships in November. I think what they're trying to do is buy some time so they can go into an election and say, we're taking action on the cruise ship issue, which is very important, particularly to Vancouver and to Victoria, because they couldn't do this 6 months ago. If you have a single situation where somebody with COVID comes to BC, then you got a severe crisis in your hands.
Right, which you don't want when you're standing on the precipice of calling an election.
Well, especially when, you come here clean-shaven and essentially announcing a bunch of stuff that is going to happen. So I think this is the reason for it to happen today. It's in November when nobody's going to get into a cruise ship.
No, that's not happening. Gentlemen, always a pleasure to hang out with you. Thank you for bringing it today, as you always do. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Jody. Thanks, Mario.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Jody.